My name is Elaine Morgan. I turned 61 on a Thursday, and all I wanted was a quiet dinner, just my son, his wife, and a few close friends. Nothing extravagant, just a small celebration with warm food and warmer company. The kind of evening where no one needs to perform, and no one expects anything more than your presence. But what I got that night was something entirely different. It wasn't a celebration, it was a takeover. You see, that dinner turned out to be a stage, and I wasn't the guest of honor. I was the final obstacle in someone else's story, a story that had been written without me, about me, and in a way that made me feel like a stranger in my own life. My son, Brandon, stood up halfway through the meal, clinked his glass, and with a proud smile, announced to everyone that he and his wife, Tina, would be moving into my apartment. He didn't ask. He declared. Tina beamed as she filmed the moment on her phone. "We're just so grateful," she said, "that you've been so generous. Not every mom would hand over her home like this." My heart sank, but I smiled because I didn't know what else to do. I felt cornered, ambushed, like I had been pushed onto a stage without knowing the lines. They thought I would just hand it over, that I would smile and say thank you while they took everything I had built over 30 years. But what they didn't know, what they never considered, is that I may have been quiet, but I wasn't weak. And I wasn't about to let them take my life apart without a fight. The restaurant Tina picked was one of those trendy, industrial chic spots with exposed brick walls and dim Edison bulbs that made everything look warmer than it really was. The kind of place that served tiny portions on oversized plates and where the servers called you boss or queen like it was part of a script. I barely had time to sit down before Tina handed me a gift bag. She looked so pleased with herself. Her makeup perfect, nails painted pale pink, her expression glowing with anticipation. Inside the bag was a baby onesie that said "Best Grandma Ever." "We thought it was time," she said, eyes wide and glittering, "to start planning the nursery. Right, Brandon?" Brandon gave me a look, calm, measured, too rehearsed. "Yeah, especially now that we'll have more space." I blinked. More space? Tina leaned across the table and said it so casually, so sweetly, I almost missed the weight of her words. "We're just so grateful you agreed, Elaine. Honestly, not every mom would be this generous." I looked around the table. Our friends had gone quiet, their smiles strained, waiting for me to smile too. But I hadn't agreed to anything, not verbally, not in writing, not even in body language. I was completely unaware that, apparently, I had given away my home. Before I could speak, Brandon stood up and tapped his spoon against his wine glass. "Can I have everyone's attention?" The entire restaurant seemed to hush. "Tonight's not just about celebrating my incredible mom's birthday," he said, voice loud enough for the servers to glance over. "It's about the future. Tina and I are moving into Mom's apartment. It just makes sense. She doesn't need all that space anymore, and we're starting our family. It's such a gift, honestly, so generous." Tina pulled out her phone and started recording. Brandon lifted his glass to the woman who made it all possible. Glasses clinked. I didn't move. My fork hung in midair. My hand went cold. I tried to smile. I really did. But the muscles in my face wouldn't cooperate. I looked at my son, my only child, and saw not gratitude, not warmth, but expectation. Entitlement. I nodded, not because I agreed, but because I panicked. The moment felt like a trap, like something had snapped shut around me and I didn't even realize I'd stepped into it. And then the performance went on. Tina began describing how she'd redecorate, which walls would be painted, where the crib would go, how she'd take down those old lady curtains. She actually laughed and said, "Of course, we'll let you visit. You can still keep your plants on the balcony." Brandon chimed in, "We'll give you plenty of time to move out. No pressure." No pressure. After publicly announcing that the home I had shared with my late husband for 30 years would now be their nursery. That was the moment I knew something was very wrong, not just with the situation, but with them. They hadn't asked. They hadn't waited. They had decided. And I was expected to quietly step aside. But I wasn't ready to disappear. Not yet. I left the dinner before dessert was over. My chest was tight, and my head felt like it had been packed with cotton. Brandon gave me a look, a subtle frown, like I was being dramatic. Tina offered to call me a rideshare, still chirping about how I'd need help moving boxes soon. I declined and walked home 3 blocks in heels I hadn't worn in years. Each step blistered my toes, but the pain helped me focus. It was the only thing that cut through the noise in my head. When I stepped into my apartment, something felt off. The walls hadn't moved, the furniture hadn't changed, but the air was different. Heavier, like my home had already started to belong to someone else. I locked the door behind me, then checked it again, and again. I couldn't sleep. Instead, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the bookshelf where my husband's photos lined the top. Suddenly, they looked like warnings, not memories. Eventually, I opened a drawer I hadn't touched since his funeral: old file folders, legal documents, insurance, his will. That's when I found it. A power of attorney form. Signed during a hospital stay when I had pneumonia 2 years ago. I barely remembered it. Brandon had brought the paperwork to my bedside, said it was just in case anything happened. I had been exhausted, foggy, and I signed it just to get him to stop talking. But there it was, his name. I texted my lawyer at midnight. Is this still valid? Her response came first thing in the morning. If you never revoked it, yes, we need to talk today. That's when it clicked. Brandon hadn't guessed I'd say yes. He wasn't hopeful. He was sure. He was executing a plan. Tina smiled, the way she filmed everything, the rehearsed tone in Brandon's voice, none of it was spontaneous. It had been in motion for a long time, and I'd walked into it blindly. I hadn't even replied to the dinner announcement yet, but they had already claimed my apartment publicly. When I checked my phone, I found Tina's latest post. A slow pan across my living room, set to soft acoustic music. The caption read, "The beginning of our family's next chapter. Saying goodbye to Grandma's place and hello to our new home." My couch, my lace curtains, my bookshelves. There were dozens of comments, so sweet of her to pass it down. She must be thrilled. Such a generous heart. I scrolled until I couldn't breathe. Then I opened my email. Brandon had already sent me a transition plan, a list of items they wanted cleared out by the end of the month, suggested move-out dates, a Pinterest board titled Neutral Nursery Aesthetic, with photos of how they planned to transform my bedroom into a crib and rocking chair setup. I hadn't said yes, but to them that didn't matter. They had already started acting like it was theirs. But they were wrong. Because I hadn't even started fighting yet. By 9 a.m., I was sitting in my lawyer's office in pressed slacks and a shirt I hadn't worn in years, the kind that buttons all the way up and makes you feel like your spine is steel. I brought every folder I could find: wills, deeds, insurance, and that power of attorney form with Brandon's name on it. My lawyer, Annette, didn't sugarcoat anything. She flipped through the documents, lips pursed. "You never revoked this," she said. "Technically, if someone claimed you were mentally unwell, even a little, he could use this to act on your behalf." "But I'm not unwell," I said. She nodded. "Yes, but all he needs is one doctor to say otherwise on paper. It's rare, but families have pulled it off, especially when real estate is involved." I went still. My own son was trying to build a legal case against me before I even disagreed. "We need to revoke this immediately," Annette said, "and from now on, don't sign anything. Don't text anything emotional. Everything goes through me." When I got home, I tested my key at the gate. For a moment it didn't work. My hands shook. Had they changed the locks already? Was I being paranoid? It finally turned, just stiff from the cold. But in that brief moment of fear, I realized something: I couldn't afford to be passive anymore. That night, I made a list. Everything I'd paid for in Brandon's adult life. His tuition after he lost his scholarship. Half the wedding catering. A loan for their IVF treatments that never even happened. They'd said baby, and I'd said of course. Now they were saying nursery, and assuming I'd do the same. I started locking up everything: documents, jewelry, family photos. I bought a metal lockbox and slid it under my bed. I stopped drinking wine, stopped taking sleeping pills. I needed my mind sharp. I journaled everything, every phone call, every text. I even made a grocery list by hand and dated it. Proof of clarity. Then came Tina's surprise visit. She showed up at my door with a cup of coffee and a gift bag. "Your favorite," she said, smiling. "Hazelnut cream, extra ice." She didn't text first. She didn't ask. "Inside the bag? Vitamins. Prenatals," she whispered, placing a hand on her belly. "You're pregnant?" I asked. She nodded dramatically. "Just a few weeks. We weren't going to say anything. But your gift, this apartment, it just felt like a sign." But I knew she was lying. No pregnant woman drinks sparkling water without checking the label. No one that early starts planning nursery paint colors with blueprints. When she went to the bathroom, I peeked into her open purse. Inside was a manila folder, copies of my apartment's floor plan, a Zillow estimate, notes on furniture placement. They weren't moving in, they were flipping it. Maybe even to someone else. So I took photos of everything and returned the folder without a sound. When she came back, I offered dinner. Frozen pasta. Stale wine. I let her feel at home, let her talk and talk while I sat there, quietly building my case. That night, I created a new folder on my phone. I called it Proof. Because this wasn't family anymore. This was fraud. And they had just made the biggest mistake of all, underestimating the woman who raised them. The next morning, before the sun even came up, I made my first call. "Iris," I said into the phone, "I need to disappear, and I need someone smart to help me do it." Iris had been a real estate agent in another life, before retirement, and roses took over her days. She didn't ask why I was calling so early. She just said, "Talk to me." I told her everything: the fake pregnancy, the staged announcements, the documents they had already prepared. The sonogram Tina mailed later turned out to be a stock image from a pregnancy app, framed and gift wrapped. A performance just like everything else. "They're not just trying to live here," I told her. "They're planning to sell it." Iris didn't hesitate. "We'll list it quietly," she said. "No online photos, no signs, no open houses. Just word of mouth among serious buyers. It'll move fast." And it did. While Brandon and Tina kept posting Instagram updates about our new space, I was finalizing a sale with a retired military couple who needed a quiet place in the city to be closer to their daughter. I let Brandon believe I was still soft, still docile. I liked Tina's nursery photos. I sent short, polite replies. I played along. Meanwhile, I packed my real treasures, my husband's tools, our wedding china, the photo albums. I hired a church friend, Frank, who had a truck and no curiosity. One trip, everything I needed. I changed my mailing address to a P.O. box, switched my emergency contact to Iris, filed a formal request to change the building's gate code, set a shut-off date for utilities, pretending I was recovering at a relative's home. 3 days later, Brandon showed up. He knocked like a man with something to prove. "Mom," he said through the door, "open up. We need to talk." I didn't move. He tried his old key. It didn't work. He knocked again, harder. "We know about the realtor. Are you serious right now? You're sabotaging your own family." Still, I said nothing. "You're being irrational," he added. "This isn't what Dad would have wanted." I stayed silent, arms folded, heart steady. He left, but not without sliding another envelope under my door. A legal notice filed by a law firm I'd never heard of, asking for a transitional occupancy review, citing concerns about my medical capacity. Annette, my lawyer, wasn't surprised. "They're escalating," she said, "trying to paint you as mentally unfit so they can contest the sale or your will." That night, I sat at my table with my lockbox open and recorded a video of myself. I explained every financial move I had made clearly, calmly, with dates and supporting documents. I uploaded everything to a secure folder Annette could access. I wasn't just defending my apartment, I was defending my clarity, my identity. A few days later, Tina showed up, yelling in the hallway about being abandoned, about how I'd lied to a pregnant woman. She filmed it, edited it, and posted it as a story titled "When Family Betrays You." The comments poured in, strangers calling me selfish, cruel, ungrateful. I screenshotted every one. The final straw came via text. "From Brandon, if you want to avoid court, sign the attached, and we'll forget all of this." It was a deed transfer. My name left blank. Theirs already filled in. I didn't open it. I forwarded it to Annette. Then I replied, "You'll be served within the week. Do not contact me again." And I turned off my phone. The apartment sold 2 days later. All cash, no delays, just like Iris promised. I left at dawn, pulling my single suitcase across the cracked pavement of a life I no longer owed anyone. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. Because for the first time in years, I was walking towards something of my own. Something they couldn't find, fake or flip. And this time, I wasn't moving out. I was moving on. The cabin sat near a quiet lake, tucked behind pine trees that whispered when the wind passed through. It wasn't fancy, just 2 bedrooms, a small porch, and a cracked patio that needed sealing. But it was mine. Iris met me there with a smile and hot coffee. She didn't say anything as I stepped out of the car and stood in the gravel driveway for a full minute, just breathing. She didn't need to. The quiet said enough. For weeks, I didn't check my phone. When I finally turned it back on, there were dozens of voicemails, texts, even messages from people I hadn't spoken to in years. Brandon had sent the video Tina made to our extended family. They had seen her crying on the porch and heard my one-word reply, "Leave." Some believed them. Others stayed silent. But one text stood out from my niece, Emily. She had never liked Tina and always kept a polite distance from Brandon. Her message was short. "Aunt Elaine, I don't buy any of this. Are you okay?" I replied, "Yes, safe and done." She sent back a heart emoji, and nothing else. That quiet support meant more to me than all the noise that came before it. The sale was finalized. The deed was changed. The funds were transferred into a trust I created in my husband's name, a community endowment for older women escaping financial abuse from family members. Everything I owned, my savings, the cabin, even the silver photo frame on my nightstand, now served a purpose bigger than me. Brandon and Tina were legally blocked from contesting it. There was no loophole, no clause. They didn't try again. I think they finally understood I wasn't coming back. Not to the apartment. Not to their version of our family. Not even as a memory. I built a life here. Mornings spent tending herbs in the garden, afternoons helping at the community center, evenings learning chess from my neighbor Claire, who swore I had a killer instinct under all that politeness. No one asked me for money. No one smiled only when they needed something. I laughed more. I cooked again. I slept through the night without clutching my phone like a shield. 1 week before my next birthday, I received a handwritten letter from Emily. Inside was a photo of her newborn daughter, and a note that said, "If she grows up to be half as strong as you, I'll have done something right." I pinned it to the fridge with a sunflower magnet and cried. Not the kind of tears that sting. The kind that rinse the last of something away. And that evening, I wrote a check to a shelter for women like me, women who had given too much to the wrong people for too long. I sealed the envelope with 3 words, "Use it well." If this story found you at the right time, if you've ever been silenced, pushed aside, or made to feel like your home, your value, or your mind didn't belong to you, then I hope you remember this. You don't have to shout to be heard. Sometimes the quietest exits leave the loudest echoes. If this story spoke to you, share it, like it, leave a comment. Someone else might need to know they're not alone. And that it's never too late to take your life back.
My name is Lois Carrington. I am 62 years old, and 3 nights